In this video I am talking about this Sony 20mm FE f1.8 lens. Before we go into review of this lens, let's do a tiny bit of housekeeping. If you enjoy this kind of content, photography, video, lenses, cameras, reviews, tests, please consider subscribing. Okay, let's do it. So yes, the Sony, brand new Sony 20mm FE f1.8 lens. I have got this from UK Digital, so thank you very much UK Digital for letting me to review this. Thank you guys. Okay, firstly, let's talk about build. The build. The first thing you notice about this lens is small. It is very, very small for a wide angle prime lens. It's also very light, only 373 grams. It's weather sealed. It's got a standard buttons. It's got a standard autofocus manual switch, focus hold button, which you can program to different functions on your Sony Alpha camera. So it has got the aperture ring, which is just the standard nice aperture ring, but it's the different thing about this lens is the same as 24mm G master lens. It's got a declick aperture switch, so when you switch it on you can do smooth silent changes of aperture. Normally you just put it on an automatic and leave it at that, and you can control the aperture via your camera. It's 67mm diameter for a filter. You can actually put a filter on this wide angle lens. A lot of wide angle lenses has got a curved front element, so you can't put the filters on. This one is just standard flat, and you can put your ND filter or circular polarizing filter, whatever filter you normally use. It has got very smooth and accurate focusing ring. I'll talk about this later, but when you do manual focusing, it is very, very accurate for micro adjustments. It's got a very good autofocusing. It's got XD, it's got Sony's XD linear motor in it. Basically, it has got tracks or rods inside the lens which adjust the distance of the glass elements to do focusing. Actually, when you tilt it down or up, you can actually hear the glass elements moving inside the lens. Very clever, and it works very, very well. One thing I don't like with a lens like this, when it's got a manual aperture, why there is no distance markers for the focus ring. There must be a reason, I don't know. I would love to see some kind of distance measure. I think that would be a nice feature to have distance numbers for the focus. Okay, let's talk about the performance of this lens. This lens has got 9 aperture blades, which creates beautifully smooth bokeh, but we're gonna get there. Firstly, this lens is literally fun to use. Since I've put it on my camera, it just feels like it belongs there. It's small, light. You can just take the camera with you when you're going out. You don't have to take even a camera bag with you. Just nice, compact package. As all wide angle lenses, it is not the most versatile lens. When you use this lens after using anything not as wide as this, you will notice that everything is seriously far away from you. But you get used to this, and this lens is certainly a lot of fun to use. It is super sharp from edge to edge, even at wide aperture f1.8. It has got very smooth bokeh, but I've learned recently that the bokeh on the lenses like this, the wide aperture lenses, if you're shooting over faster than 1,000 of a second, the bokeh actually is smoother and cleaner if you switch E-front curtain shooter. I don't know why, but it just, by default, all Alpha cameras got it switched on, and if you switch it off and you're shooting over faster than 1,000 of a second, the bokeh seems a little bit smoother. It is 20mm, and it has got a superb wide field of view, and it's great for architecture, street photography, or just being creative with. It focuses really close, almost macro. Sony says it focuses on at 0.19 meter, which if I'm right, I might be wrong. Correct me in comments below if I am wrong. That's 19 centimeters. But I have measured, actually focusing using autofocus, this lens will focus at the distance of 6 centimeters. And if you switch it to manual, and focus manually, it will focus at the distance of 4.5 centimeters, which, I do have a ruler here, is literally this far. Yes, that close. The focus and using the focusing ring to do macro adjustments on a distance this close, where everything is much closer and much bigger, it's very, very precise. Using focus peaking even on your camera, it's just very precise, very easy to manually focus. This lens is actually very low distortion, so as you point it straight at something square, like a window or a square, it actually doesn't distort a lot. But in my opinion, in my experience, when you point this lens up at architecture or down, or you just change your point of view from your eye level, I think this lens actually creates more wacky and more bent, distorted perspective than the Sigma I have reviewed a couple of weeks ago, which the link is here, the Sigma 20mm f1.4 lens. Saying that, I quite like this because it gives you more creative view of the world, and I do like that kind of wackiness of the wide angle like this. Let's talk about the video performance. First, let's have a look at this little B-roll. There's some crazy light leaks, and that's purely my fault. Didn't have a 67mm ND filter, and I've used the step-up rings to put the ND filter, and there was some light leaking. It looks kind of cool, but it's not the lens doing it, but poorly attached filter. Okay, the wide angle of this lens at 20mm is great focal length for a lot of video usage applications. Great autofocusing on A7 III absolutely faultlessly, even surprisingly makes the A7S II focus better than with any lens I have used it before. It's designed to work well in video. Contrast, the color, everything seems to be working like with a GM lens, very, very high quality. This lens is also great for vlogging. It's just the right focal length. 24mm is just slightly too close, and the 16mm is way too wide, but there is no stabilization built into lens. There's only an IBIS inside the camera, so you get a bit of that, bit more of that jitter while you vlog and you walk with the camera. As I said before, this lens is very light. As you can see, it's also very small, but it doesn't balance very well on the gimbal. Surprisingly, because the weight of the lens, the camera on the other side of it makes it a little bit heavier on the back. On the gimbal I'm using, because of where the center of gravity is, I couldn't tighten the plate onto the gimbal, and I had to raise the camera with a cheese plate, a small rig cheese plate, just to have a bit of leverage. It took a bit of getting used to put this on, but comparing to other lenses I'm using, like 24-105 Sony or the heavy and super big Sigma 20mm, they all balance straight out the box on the camera and a gimbal, no problem. With this, I had to faff for quite some time to get that balanced right, and not only because it's small and it's light. Maybe it's not a problem, but comparing to other lenses I've used before, it was a little bit fiddly. Who is this lens for? Certainly for street photographers. The size of it, the weight of it is just the right lens to just put on the camera and take with you. Because of its wide angle and wide field of view, it's great for Astro photography and the real estate photography and videography. Absolutely perfect for vlogging, or for people who want small light lens with a different angle of view than your all other prime lenses to be creative with. The value and the competition. This lens retails in UK at the moment for £949. The closest Sony equivalent to this, the prime 24mm G Master lens 1.4, is £400 more expensive. You could actually buy another lens with a difference between these two lenses. So a G Master 24mm is £1,349. But I think the closest competition to this lens is the Sigma 20mm. The same focal length, slightly wider aperture at f1.4, but you wouldn't really see that much difference. Sigma cannot focus this close, for starters, and it's obviously significantly bigger. It's huge and heavy comparing to this. But overall, I think Sigma actually is better quality at the lower price, about 600 or just over £600 at the moment in UK, so £300 cheaper than this. But if you need something small and light and easy to carry and something you can put a filter on, this definitely wins. So conclusion, the lens is actually very well built. It's light, it's small, super sharp edge to edge, declickable aperture ring, and fun to use. Would I buy it? I would definitely buy this lens. I love this lens so much, I will struggle to part with it. I think I'll have to purchase this sooner than later. This lens, like no other lens I've actually tried, and especially prime lens, I've never had this much fun actually using the lens and creating pictures or just having it on the camera. I definitely will be having this lens in my kit. And this is it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing, and see you next time. We are rolling again to the Samsung. It is wide lens and it should be used as wide lens, so superb. Let's go through tiny, which they adjust. It's light, it's small, and